Let us begin with a paradox. The universe, vast and infinite, speaks to us constantly, and yet its language is silence. Have you noticed? The most profound moments in life are often the quiet ones, the stillness of a starry night, the hush before a storm, the serene calm of a forest untouched. Why is it that we, in all our noise and chatter, so often miss this gentle whisper of existence? Now imagine for a moment that God, however you conceive of that force, be it a divine being, a cosmic intelligence, or the great mystery of life itself, wants to speak to you. You see, we've become addicted to noise, not just external noise, but the internal clamor of our restless minds. We talk to ourselves incessantly, don't we? Thoughts tumbling over thoughts, opinions wrestling with opinions. We are perpetually planning, worrying, judging, replaying the past, or anticipating the future. And in this mental racket, we drown out the very thing we claim to seek: clarity, peace, connection. But here's the curious thing. Silence isn't an absence. It's not a void or a blank. True silence is alive. It is vibrant. It is full. It is in silence that we come face to face with what is, not what we think about what is, but the raw, unfiltered reality of existence. This is why God, if we dare to personify the eternal, asks us for silence. In silence, we stop fighting against the current of life. We stop imposing our will upon the world, and instead, we listen. And when we truly listen, something miraculous happens. We begin to hear the harmony that underlies everything, the song of existence that has no words, but speaks directly to the soul. Now, you might say, but I have so many questions. I need answers. I need to know what to do, where to go, how to live. And here's the secret. The answers you seek are not hidden from you. They're not locked away in some distant heaven or buried in the words of others. They are already within you, waiting to emerge in the space of stillness. But you must be willing to stop and listen. You must trust that in the quiet, God speaks, not in the way we speak, but in the way the wind whispers through the trees, or the ocean sighs against the shore. And so, let us be silent, not as an act of suppression, but as an act of liberation. Let us lay down the burdens of our noisy minds and enter the sacred stillness where life reveals its truth. And when we do, we may find that God has been waiting there all along, not to tell us what to do, but to remind us of who we truly are. Silence is often misunderstood. Many think of it as a mere absence, a blank void where nothing happens. But in truth, silence is the foundation upon which everything is built. It is not just the background, it is the very fabric of existence, the space that holds all sound, all movement, all light. Without silence, there would be no room for anything to exist. Imagine a piece of music. Its beauty depends not only on the notes played, but on the silence that separates them. Without those pauses, without that space, the music would collapse into chaos. In the same way, silence is the canvas upon which the universe paints its masterpiece. It is where the divine speaks, not with words or proclamations, but through the profound stillness that underlies all things. To hear this voice requires more than just the absence of noise. It requires an openness, a willingness to let go of our constant need to fill the space with our thoughts, our fears, and our judgments. When we quiet ourselves, truly quiet ourselves, we begin to notice what has always been there. This is why silence has always been revered in spiritual traditions across the world. It is seen as sacred not because it is empty, but because it is full of potential, full of presence, full of the essence of what we call divine. To sit in silence is to sit with God, to be in communion with something greater than ourselves. Yet, silence is not something we can force. It is not something we can create, for it is already there. What we can do is make space for it, allow it to surface by letting go of the noise we carry with us. In doing so, we begin to understand that silence is not separate from us. It is not something we visit. It is something we are. It is the essence of our being, the quiet truth that lies beneath all the chatter of the mind. Noise surrounds us in every aspect of modern life, filling our ears and minds with a constant hum of activity. There is the external noise, the chatter of conversations, the buzz of technology, the ceaseless hum of urban life. Then there is the internal noise, which is far more pervasive and harder to escape. It is the endless stream of thoughts, worries, judgments, and mental dialogues that occupy our minds from the moment we wake to the moment we sleep. We have grown so accustomed to this state that we rarely question it. We rarely notice how it blocks us from truly experiencing life. This constant noise, both external and internal, acts as a veil. It obscures the clarity we seek, the understanding we crave. It distracts us from what is real and keeps us trapped in a cycle of reaction, always caught up in what happened before or what might happen next. The present moment, the only reality we ever truly have, becomes buried beneath this endless clamor. Noise also isolates us. It creates a barrier not just between us and the world, but between us and ourselves. The irony is that we often seek clarity and peace by adding more noise. We turn to distractions, consume more information, or seek answers outside of ourselves, believing that if we just think hard enough or do enough, we will find what we are looking for. But this only feeds the cycle. Clarity cannot be forced. It arises naturally when the noise subsides. The internal noise, the ceaseless mental activity, is perhaps the hardest to recognize because it feels so personal. It feels like us, but it is not. It is a pattern, a habit of the mind, not the essence of who we are. This noise is not our enemy, but neither is it our truth. It is simply what happens when we forget how to be still, how to listen, how to let the silence speak. Truth, silence, is not an absence of sound, but a presence of something deeper, something alive and vibrant. It is often misunderstood as emptiness, as a void where nothing exists. However, silence is far from being a barren space. It is a fullness, a richness that cannot be adequately described with words. It is the fertile ground from which all things arise, and to which all things eventually return. In silence, there is a profound sense of being. It is not passive, not a simple lack of noise, but an active state of presence. It is the stillness that allows life to unfold, the backdrop against which every sound, movement, and thought plays out. Without silence, there would be no contrast, no depth, no way to perceive the intricate beauty of existence. It is the thread that holds the fabric of life together, subtle yet indispensable. Think of a deep forest. At first, it might seem silent, but when you truly listen, you begin to hear the symphony of life within it. The rustling of leaves, the distant call of a bird, the gentle creak of trees swaying in the wind. None of these sounds compete with one another. They exist harmoniously within the vast embrace of silence. This is the nature of true silence. It is not the absence of activity, but the space that allows all activity to exist in balance and harmony. Silence also has a way of revealing truths that noise conceals. In the stillness, there is no distraction, no way to escape from what is. This can be unsettling at first, as silence confronts us with our own thoughts, our own emotions, and the reality of our lives. Yet it is only in this confrontation that clarity can emerge. Silence acts as a mirror, reflecting back to us the essence of who we are, unclouded by the noise of the world. This vibrancy of silence is why it is often sought in moments of reflection, prayer, or meditation. It is where answers arise, not as shouted proclamations, but as quiet realizations. In this stillness, there is a sense of connection to something larger, something infinite and timeless. Silence becomes not just a state, but a gateway, a bridge to the deeper layers of existence that are always present, yet so often overlooked in the busyness of life. God's voice, if it can be called a voice at all, does not come to us as something loud or insistent. It does not demand attention, does not seek to overwhelm. Instead, it is quiet, subtle, and ever-present, like the air we breathe. It does not compete with the noise of the world because it exists on a different plane altogether, one that cannot be reached through force or effort, but only through stillness and surrender. This voice is an invitation, not a command. In the silence, there is no urgency, no need to rush or achieve. There is only the gentle pull of presence, the quiet reminder that everything we seek is already here. But to hear this requires a willingness to let go of our habitual ways of thinking and being. It requires us to stop, to pause, to make space. This is why God's voice often goes unnoticed. It does not shout to be heard above the din. It waits patiently for us to quiet ourselves enough to listen. This invitation is not about rules or doctrines. It is not about fitting into a particular mold or following a specific path. It is about reconnecting with the essence of life itself, the source from which all things flow. God, in this sense, is not a distant figure or an abstract concept. God is the presence that permeates all things, the silent witness to every moment. And this presence speaks not in words, but in the stillness that underlies everything. To accept this invitation is to let go of the need for answers and certainty. It is to trust that in the quiet, what we need will arise. It is to understand that the divine does not operate on our timelines or according to our expectations. It moves in its own way, at its own pace, and always with a wisdom that surpasses our understanding. This is not a voice that can be analyzed or dissected. It is not something we can grasp with the mind alone. It is something we feel, something we know in the depths of our being. When we allow ourselves to be still, to be open, to be silent, when we seek answers, we often look outward. We search for guidance in books, in conversations, in the opinions of others. We analyze, we debate, we try to piece together solutions from fragments of information. Yet, despite all this effort, the clarity we crave often seems just out of reach. This is because answers do not come from the noise of the world, or even from the noise of our own minds. They arise from a deeper place, one that can only be accessed in stillness. In silence, we create space for what is already within us to come to the surface. The answers we seek are not separate from us. They are woven into the very fabric of our being. But in the rush and chaos of life, we rarely give them the chance to emerge. Instead, we drown them out with endless thoughts, plans, and distractions, convincing ourselves that the harder we think, the closer we'll get to the truth. True answers, however, do not arrive with the force of logic or argument. They come gently, often unexpectedly, as quiet realizations or subtle shifts in perspective. These moments of insight cannot be manufactured. They happen when the mind becomes quiet enough to allow them through. It is like the surface of a pond. When the water is agitated, it is impossible to see what lies beneath. But when it becomes still, everything is revealed with perfect clarity. Silence, then, is not an empty space, but a fertile one. It is a space of potential, where understanding grows naturally, like seeds sprouting in fertile soil. This is not to say that silence provides the kind of answers we might expect, or even the ones we think we want. It does not hand us a detailed plan or solve our problems in a linear way. What it offers is something deeper, a sense of alignment, a sense of knowing that transcends words. It reconnects us with the flow of life, with the intuitive wisdom that has always been there, waiting for us to notice it. In this space, we come to understand that the answers we need are already present, waiting to be uncovered in the quiet stillness of our own being. In silence, we are not limited. We are unburdened. We are given the opportunity to let go of everything that clouds our perception and weigh us down. When we step into silence, we begin to notice something remarkable. The tension we carry, the need to prove ourselves, the restlessness of the mind, all of it starts to dissolve. In its place comes a sense of spaciousness, a feeling that we are no longer confined by the narrow boundaries of our own thinking. This reconnection is not something external or foreign. It is a return to what we have always been but have forgotten in the noise of daily life. Beneath the layers of thoughts, opinions, and identities, there is a quiet presence that is unchanging, limitless, and whole. This presence is not separate from silence, it is silence itself. When we embrace silence, we are embracing our true nature, the essence of who we are beyond the mind. Or liberation through silence does not mean withdrawing from life or retreating from the world. It means engaging with life in a new way, free from the distractions and illusions that cloud our vision. In silence, we become aware of the interconnectedness of all things. We see that we are not isolated individuals, but part of a greater whole. This awareness brings with it a sense of peace, a knowing that we do not need to struggle to belong or to be enough. We already are. Through silence, we discover that liberation is not about changing who we are or what we do. It is about shedding the layers of noise and conditioning that obscure the truth. It is about allowing ourselves to be as we are, without judgment or resistance. Silence does not take anything away from us, and instead it reveals what has always been present, the freedom and wholeness that lie at the heart of our being. In the end, the essence of this message is not about adding something new to our lives, but about uncovering what has always been there. Silence is not a withdrawal, it is a return. It is the space where we hear the voice of the divine, the stillness that holds the wisdom we seek, and the presence that connects us to the infinite. When we allow ourselves to embrace silence, we step beyond the noise of the world and the clamor of the mind. We find clarity, peace, and truth, not as things to be achieved, but as the natural state of being. God, or whatever name we give to the sacred, does not demand our silence out of control or obligation. It is an invitation to be fully present, to listen deeply, and to rediscover the essence of who we are. In silence, life speaks. In silence, we awaken. And in silence, we remember that we are not separate from the divine, but part of its unfolding. All it asks of us is to listen.